What if I told you that the best episode of Community wasn't any of the paintball episodes? Of course, everyone is allowed to have their own opinion, and after all, the value of any piece of entertainment is almost entirely subjective and blah blah blah, but that can't stop me from making a YouTube video to help you open your eyes to the truth. Now, if you're a fan of the show, then you know that best episode is a very hard title to earn. And one of the reasons why there are so many memorable episodes of the show is because of the way that it boldly takes on seemingly random genres of film or TV. Whether it's a procedural drama in Basic Lupine Urology, or a spaghetti western in For a Few Paintballs More, or a zombie apocalypse in Epidemiology. When you press play on an episode of Community, you really never know what you're gonna get. And thanks to some fantastic writing, I feel like the show pretty much nails every genre that it takes on. So to say that any episode is better than all the ones that I just named, plus a ton of other iconic and creative Community episodes, is very bold. So what is it that could make one episode stand above the rest?
Annie, it's just the pizza.
We can't buzz him up. Someone has to go down.
Remedial Chaos Theory is an episode where Troy and Abed are throwing a housewarming party in their new apartment. The episode kicks off with the gang sitting around the table as they decide who should be the one that has to run downstairs to get their pizza from the delivery guy. I know what you're thinking. How could this possibly be as exciting as an episode where Troy and Abed build a pillow fort big enough to have its own Latvian independence parade?
Don't look at me, they had the proper permits.
Well, in usual Community fashion, the show puts a very interesting twist on a seemingly boring scenario. Jeff holds up a die and says that he'll roll it to decide who has to go get the pizza. He assigns a number to everyone in the group and gets ready to roll the die to see whose unlucky number comes up. Before he does, Abed says, "Just so you know, Jeff, you're now creating 6 different timelines." But Jeff tosses the die unbothered. And history would never be the same. The rest of the episode is spent exploring all of the possible outcomes of Jeff's rolling of the die. That is, one where each member of the group is the one to leave the room to go get the pizza. So like the title of the episode suggests, we'll be seeing chaos theory in action. We'll see how one single initial condition can vastly change the outcome of a simple dinner party, and all of the patterns that emerge throughout the chaos. Now, I might have already sold you on the awesomeness of this episode just based on the premise alone, but in this video, I'm going to show you how this episode is elevated beyond just some gimmicky sci-fi concept, and actually ends up being one of the most intricately crafted, heartfelt, and funniest episodes of Community. To show you what I mean, let's peer into the multiverse and take a look at the first timeline that we see in the episode.
Two. 1, 2. Annie.
Okay, fine.
In this timeline, the number 2 is rolled, which means that Annie is the one that has to go get the pizza. However, she leaves her purse in the room with the rest of the gang, and as soon as she's gone, this happens.
Guys? What does a pregnancy test look like?
No, it's like a thin piece of plastic with a thing on the end of it.
Okay, so this is definitely a gun.
Whoa!
And with the reveal of Annie's gun, I can't imagine a better time to talk about Chekhov's gun. Chekhov's gun is a narrative principle that states that every element in a story must serve some purpose. The phrase Chekhov's gun originates from advice that writer Anton Chekhov would commonly give to young playwrights. If in Act 1 you have a pistol hanging on the wall, then it must fire in the last act. Now, for what it's worth, I think the idea of Chekhov's gun isn't supposed to be taken as literally as that statement might appear. For example, in one of Chekhov's own plays, there are 2 loaded firearms that are introduced and then never fired. The rifles, however, play into the story's theme of incomplete action. And therefore, the way that I see it, the rifles serve a purpose in the story by, ironically, not being fired. I only wanted to add that because I think it would be ridiculous to watch a movie or something and then claim that it was poorly written just because at one point there was a gun introduced that was never fired. There's an infinite number of ways that an element in a story can serve a purpose. As for Annie's gun, we'll have to wait and see if something becomes of it. And if the principle of Chekhov's gun is to be followed, then something will become of it. Since Annie seems like such an innocent girl, the group is shocked when they find out that she carries a gun. But after Annie returns with the pizza, something interesting happens. We rewind time to look at what would have happened if someone else went. And in this timeline, since Annie never leaves her purse unattended, the gang never finds out about the gun, leaving them clueless, but leaving us with the suspense of knowing that it's there. Notice how the show is already taking advantage advantage of this unique form of storytelling. Without these parallel timelines, the show would have to find a more traditional way of introducing us and only us to Annie's gun. Maybe by showing her put it in her purse before heading to the party, or by giving us a specific camera angle that reveals it hiding in her purse, or something like that. But here we can have a little more fun with it. We learned about the gun in an alternate reality that, for all intents and purposes, no longer exists. So now that we're familiar with the idea that is the foundation of this episode, I wonder what other proverbial guns we can discover. Going back to Annie's timeline, we see Britta try to sing Roxanne by the Police before Jeff shuts her down.
No.
Offended, Britta heads to the bathroom.
Bathroom?
Yeah, over here.
Pierce gives Troy a gift.
Here, Troy. Happy housewarming.
Jeff bumps his head on the ceiling fan.
I'm gonna get a drink.
For some reason, no one wants to eat Shirley's pies.
Don't fight over them. Well, you can fight a little.
Abed notes a weird smell as Britta leaves the bathroom.
Smells weird.
I beg your pardon?
Britta is acting strange.
Pizza! Pizza, pizza, going tummy, me so hungry, me so hungry.
Which, to be fair, Britta is pretty weird most of the time, but even for her, this is out of the ordinary. And Annie says that the pizza guy was super creepy.
Pizza guy was super creepy.
So you're saying he was a pizza guy?
End of timeline. At this point, nothing we've seen is particularly interesting, beside maybe the gun. But we have a number of seeds planted and questions raised, even if we didn't notice. Annie's timeline is the foundation for the episode. It's the jumping off point. And from here on out, each successive timeline will get more interesting as things build off of it.
Four. 1, 2, 3, 4. Shirley.
Okay.
In this timeline, Shirley's number is rolled, so she's the one that has to go get the pizza. She tells the group to make sure someone takes her pies out of the oven, and she's off.
Just don't let my pies burn.
As soon as she's gone, some new information is revealed.
Remember, no one eats those pies.
Come on, let's just talk to her.
We tried that, Annie, but she ignored us. The woman has a baking problem.
The gang has been having an ongoing issue with Shirley's baking, which explains why no one wanted to eat her pies in Annie's timeline. Again, Jeff shuts down Britta's singing, Britta heads to the bathroom, and Pierce gives Troy a gift. Only this time, Troy actually opens it. The gift is a Norwegian troll, one that used to haunt Troy when he lived with Pierce. So Troy hates this thing, and the gift is just a cruel prank from Pierce. Jeff bumps his head on the fan again, but this time, since Annie's there, she offers to help him out. When Shirley returns with the pizza and finds her pies burnt in the oven because no one took them out, she storms off, slamming the door behind her, which sets in motion a mini boulder from Abed's replica of a scene from Indiana Jones, but luckily Abed is there to catch it. End of timeline. Some of these details may seem pointless now, but remember that it's all about setups and payoffs.
Oh, they've got a class on how to write jokes.
Oh, don't take that. I dropped it after the lesson on setups. The professor is so old.
We now know about a handful of secrets that the characters won't going into the next timeline. The gun, the doll, and the mini boulder, just to name a few. So with that in mind, let's move on to Pierce's timeline.
3. 1, 2, 3. Pierce.
Crap.
Again, Jeff shuts down Britta's singing, along with a look of approval from Annie this time.
No.
Britta heads to the bathroom, shortly followed by Troy, who knocks the mini boulder loose on his way there. When he gets there, it's revealed that Britta is actually in there to smoke weed, which explains her weird behavior from the other timelines, Abed noting the weird smell coming out of the bathroom, and also I'd say it explains why she always asks where the bathroom is every time after Jeff rudely stops her from singing, just to take a little bit of the edge off. Britta and Troy have a heart-to-heart in the bathroom, and Annie and Jeff have a heart-to-heart in the kitchen after Jeff bumps his head on the ceiling fan. Here we see how close these two pairs are to possibly falling for each other. All they really needed was the right set of circumstances, and that's what they got in this timeline. Pierce returns with the pizza, and as far as these timelines go, this is a pretty happy one. End of timeline.
6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Britta.
Great.
Since Britta's the one that's gone in this timeline, we get a break from the singing and jump straight to Jeff hitting his head. At this point, we know that Jeff and Annie are naturally drawn to each other, so of course they split off from the group, and since Britta isn't lighting up in the bathroom, they go there instead of the kitchen. Meanwhile, in the living room, we get a little more context as to why Pierce gives Troy such an evil gift in the other timelines.
You're the best.
Want to stay up all night talking in our bunk beds?
You're doing.
Here, Troy. Happy housewarming.
Oh, cool.
Seeing Troy and his new roommate Abed getting along so well makes Pierce jealous, as he's Troy's ex-roommate. Meanwhile, in the bathroom, we hear an explanation as to why Annie feels the need to carry a gun.
The guy got stabbed outside my building.
What?
And since they have a little more privacy in this timeline, they actually almost kiss, but are interrupted by Troy's screams of terror caused by the Norwegian troll. And then, the moment you've all been waiting for, thanks to Britta's fantastic taste in men, we finally get the big pizza guy reveal.
Hey guys, this is Toby, our pizza delivery guy, and I know this is gonna sound nuts, but we're in love and we're getting married.
Which explains comments made in the other timelines. End of timeline. So the stage has been set. Now we know about all these things that are bubbling up just beneath the surface. Elements of the story that the show has gone out of its way to introduce us to. And as per Chekhov's gun, every element in a story must serve some purpose.
One, Troy.
I'm gonna go as fast as I can so I don't miss anything.
Troy slams the door behind him on his way to go get the pizza. This knocks the mini boulder loose, as we knew that it would. Jeff shuts Britta down, and she goes straight to the bathroom, where we know she'll be lighting up in secret. Jeff hits his head on the fan, prompting Annie to take him into the kitchen, but this time she trips on the rolling mini boulder on her way there. She falls down onto a table, which flings a bottle of Pierce's Serbian rum and her purse across the room. Startled by his rare bottle of rum being shattered all over the floor, Pierce gets up and knocks over the cursed gift that he brought for Troy. Annie's purse lands, and the gun inside that we've known about all along misfires and shoots Pierce in the leg. Taking the literal approach to Chekhov's gun, I see. Britta rushes out of the bathroom so fast that she forgets to take the joint out of her mouth. And she's so shocked when she sees what's going on that it accidentally falls out of her mouth and onto the very flammable rum that the floor is now covered with. Troy returns with the pizza just in time to behold the cruel crescendo of everything that's been set up in the other timelines. His apartment on fire, his friend dying on the ground, and everyone in a state of sheer panic. And the cherry on top of this moment, seemingly ripped right out of a Final Destination movie, is what Troy finds in the middle of it all. End of timeline. So all the pieces of the puzzle neatly fit together to make one spectacular tragedy. Now imagine if I showed you Troy's timeline, otherwise known as the darkest timeline, stripped of the context of the other timelines. In a vacuum, you probably wouldn't think anything of it, because none of these moving pieces of the story would mean anything to you. What makes it so satisfying to watch is that it was all properly set up. Now this would be a rather dark note to end the episode on, so of course, Troy's timeline isn't the last one that we see.
5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Abed.
I'm on it.
So we get the usual stuff. Roxanne, bathroom, ceiling fan, kitchen, all the classics. This time, Britta walks out of the bathroom with a bad case of the munchies when she smells Shirley's pies. We know that Shirley has her insecurities that she covers up with her baking, so this means a lot to her. Pierce tries to give Troy the evil doll, but this time since they're alone, Troy opens up to Pierce about how much he actually does appreciate his friendship. And in the kitchen, we see the usual sappy stuff with Jeff and Annie. If Troy's timeline is the darkest timeline, then it's looking like this one could be the brightest. But then Britta accidentally spills a secret that we already knew about.
I was not supposed to eat your stuff. We all made an agreement. Crap! I was not supposed to say that out loud. Crap! Okay, cards on the table. I'm really high right now.
The group had decided beforehand that they would no longer enable Shirley's baking, which is exactly what Britta is doing right now. After hearing Troy express his appreciation for him, Pierce decides he doesn't want to give him the evil doll after all, but Troy's curiosity is getting the best of him. Jeff and Annie finally actually kiss after a handful of timelines where they almost did. But the kiss is interrupted by Annie telling Jeff that he reminds her of her dad, which leads to a rather uncomfortable argument. In a struggle over the gift, the Norwegian troll pops out of the box and Troy sees that Pierce's gift wasn't really a gift after all. And thus we see the gang facing some painful truths here. So maybe this isn't actually the brightest timeline, but at least they're all still alive. End of timeline. So you might have noticed by now that there's one small flaw with Jeff's plan. A die only has 6 sides, and there are 7 members of their group. And we know that this kind of chicanery could never get past Abed. So in the next timeline, Abed catches the die before it even hits the table, and he explains to the rest of the group how Jeff tricked them. And as punishment, the gang decides to make Jeff go get the pizza, making this Britta starts singing as always, but this time Jeff isn't there to stop her, and soon the rest of the girls join in. Annie tells Abed that she likes their new place, and Abed invites her to move in with them. Maybe if she lived there, then she wouldn't have to carry a gun like we know she does. Pierce decides to spare Troy the pain and throws his evil gift away. Jeff gets back with the pizza and can't help but smile when he sees the group dancing like a bunch of goofballs and just enjoying each other's company. What we have here is a moment of ignorant bliss amongst all the chaos. Think of all the madness that we saw in the other timelines that still exist in this very moment. The mini boulder just waiting to topple off the table, the secret gun just waiting to be discovered, or the evil gift waiting to be unwrapped. All of those things are still out there and could potentially cause trouble. When Abed catches the die before they send Jeff to go get the pizza, he explains that chaos already dominates enough of their lives, and that their job isn't to resist it, but to weather it together, to cling to the few, rare things that they know to be predictable. Each other. He says that they'll be able to take on whatever chaos comes their way as long as they're honest and accepting of each other's virtues. Chaos theory states that within the apparent randomness of chaotic, complex systems, there are underlying patterns. In this episode, we saw patterns emerge thanks to the true character of the people involved. As Abed puts it, no matter what the timeline, Annie will always be driven, Shirley will always be giving, Pierce will never apologize, Britta is kind of a wild card, and Jeff will forever remain a conniving son of a bitch.
Abed, it's called chemistry. I have it with everybody.
The group is able to take on the apparent randomness of life because they have each other, people on which they can rely to be predictable. I think this episode reveals a lot about Jeff's character specifically and his relationship with the group. In Pierce's timeline, Britta explains to Troy that Jeff is an extremely guarded person. He works so hard to not reveal his true self in order to maintain his cool guy, aloof facade. Every time Britta tries to have a bit of fun by singing Roxanne, Jeff instantly and harshly shuts her down. But we see in the final timeline when Jeff sees the whole group singing together a look of genuine happiness on his face, which I think is a crack in that cool guy facade. In Pierce's timeline, when Jeff shuts down Britta's singing, we see Annie give Jeff a nod of approval, but when Britta starts singing in the final timeline when Jeff isn't present, she's totally on board with it, suggesting that maybe she was just trying to act cool to appeal to Jeff. And we see throughout all the different timelines how much the group seems to rely on Jeff.
Jeff, what are we gonna do about this?
I'm gonna get a drink.
Jeff, what are you gonna do about this?
I'm gonna get a drink.
And yet, in the one timeline when Jeff is gone, the group appears to be the happiest. I think despite what Jeff might think, he actually needs them way more than they need him. And that's what we saw in this episode. But I guess that's just gonna be our little secret, since we, the audience, were the only ones who were able to see all 7 timelines. This episode serves as a fun little showcase of chaos theory, showing how vastly different a simple scene can turn out just depending on one single initial condition, in this case the rolling of a die. And we saw how patterns can emerge even amidst apparent randomness. This episode is also a great example of Chekhov's gun, making very effective use of every second of its runtime. At only 21.5 minutes long with 7 different timelines to cover plus an intro and an ending, there was no time to waste on setups that wouldn't pay off. The writing is airtight, and that's what made it so satisfying when all the elements of the story came together. And finally, the episode leaves us with a heartwarming message about the people in your life that you care about. Life is simply too short and too fragile to not sing Roxanne with your friends. There's no point in guarding yourself to a ridiculous extreme like Jeff does. If you have an ex-roommate that you never got to tell how much you appreciated, let them know. If your friend has a baking problem, then be upfront with them about it. Although, to be honest, I can't imagine that one is very common. To me, all of this is what creates the perfect episode of Community. It's a cool sci-fi concept that you'd usually never see in a sitcom, with an intricately crafted story full of setups and payoffs, and a group of flawed but lovable characters who help each other grow. And it also goes without saying that this is just flat out one of the funniest episodes of Community. Thank you for watching, and stay gold.
I wonder what happened to all those other timelines.
Wait, there are other timelines?